Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of like pure precision, almost like
Yeah.
structural engineering.
Right, yeah. Like a broken bone.
Exactly. You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line on a black background. The doctor just points and says, there it is, broken.
It's entirely binary. The bone is whole or it's fractured. There's no real mystery.
Broken or not broken. Very clean. But as we're exploring today in our deep dive into Dr. Daniel Wallerstorfer's book, Unlock Your Genes for Precision Health, from the Nova Daily Genetics podcast, the diagnostic landscape of our DNA is it's incredibly murky.
Oh, absolutely. It's a completely different world down there.
Yeah. And today we're unpacking Chapter 20, which is called Instructions from Nature, to essentially take this absolutely massive skyscraper-sized tour inside a single cell to discover the exact blueprints of our biological destiny.
And, to really understand why those blueprints can be so complicated, we have to completely shift how we view our physical bodies. Like, the scale of human biology just defies normal intuition.
Yeah, I was actually looking at the back of my right hand right before we started recording. Just this tiny patch of skin contains millions of individual cells.
Right.
But reading the source material, what really struck me is that skin is made up of just 4 different cell types. But the entire human body, we were walking around with about 30 trillion cells.
30 trillion. And they're divided into about 200 completely different types, like brain, bone, liver, blood.
So 200 types, 30 trillion total. It's hard to even picture.
It is, which is why to understand how those 30 trillion cells communicate, we need to basically enlarge everything. So imagine we scale your body up 1 million times.
Okay, wait, if I'm a million times larger, just trying to picture the math here. I'd be about 1,200 miles tall, right? Or 2,000 kilometers.
Exactly. And at that massive height, standing on the surface of the Earth, the International Space Station would be like whizzing by right around your kneecap.
Wow. So my shin is essentially taking up the entire atmosphere.
It is. And at this 1,200-mile scale, your individual cells, which are normally microscopic, just about 100 micrometers in size, would suddenly be the size of massive skyscrapers.
That is wild.
Yeah, so you're no longer a single organism. You are basically a walking, talking metropolis of 30 trillion skyscrapers. And in the very center of every single one of those skyscrapers is a room that's about 6 meters in diameter.
6 meters across, okay.
Right, and that room is the cell nucleus.
So if that room holds the entire genetic blueprint, it's basically this vast central library for the building.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
But wait, if I have 200 different types of skyscrapers, like liver skyscrapers, brain skyscrapers, bone skyscrapers, do they all have the exact same library?
They do. Well, with a few very specific exceptions, all 30 trillion neighboring buildings contain the exact same books. The complete architectural blueprint of the entire city is stored inside the library of almost every single building.
You mentioned exceptions, though. If the library is the blueprint, there must be buildings that just operate without one.
Yeah, so red blood cells, for instance, are essentially empty skyscrapers. They have no nucleus at all, so no library.
Oh, interesting.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, your reproductive cells, like sperm and egg cells, they only carry exactly half of the library, which we'll get to why that is later.
Right. So.
Oh, and structurally, there is a tiny amount of information kept outside the library entirely. You have 13 specific genes, your mitochondrial DNA, that are basically just floating out in the hallways of the skyscraper, operating the building's power plants.
Just out in the hallway. Wow.
Yeah, but the master blueprint, securely locked in that 6-meter-wide room.
Okay, so let's walk into the middle of this library inside one of our, say, skin cell skyscrapers. If the entire blueprint of my body is in here, those shelves must be impossibly dense.
Well, they are, but the organization is highly specific. When you look at the shelves, you see exactly 23 different titles. These titles are your chromosomes. It's 23. But for the first 22 titles, there are actually 2 volumes of each book. One volume has a pink cover, which represents the genetic code you inherited from your mother.
Okay.
And the other has a blue cover, inherited from your father.
Okay, so if I pull down the very first title, Chromosome 1, how thick is this book?
Well, if we translated the biological code of that single volume into a standard font printed on standard A4 size paper, Chromosome 1 would have 69,000 pages.
69,000 pages.
Or
one volume.
Just the one. And within those 69,000 pages, it contains 2,058 specific genes. Those are the discrete instructions for your body to build things.
That's massive. And what about the other titles?
The second title, Chromosome 2, is slightly thinner, clocking in at 67,000 pages, and they basically shrink in size as you go down the shelf. By the time you reach chromosome 22, the book is a relatively breezy 14,000 pages.
A light read at 14,000 pages. Okay, so I want to open one of these books. If I pull the pink volume of chromosome 1 off the shelf and turn to page 1, I'm expecting a schematic, right? But according to the author, it's just a jumble of letters, like A, C, T, G.
Yeah, nothing but endless rows of those 4
This
letters.
sounds like nonsense.
It looks like biological junk to the naked eye, but those letters aren't ink. They physically represent nucleotide bases.
Right.
They are literal chemical structures, physical shapes snapping together like the teeth of a zipper to form a sequence. In fact, you can turn 17 pages of this repeating structural sequence without finding a single readable instruction.
Just 17 pages of blank zipper teeth. Basically.
Exactly. But then you hit page 18.
What's on page 18?
On page 18, the chemical shapes suddenly form a coherent sentence. It's the OR4F5 gene. Translated from its biological shape into an instruction, it says, when a strong-smelling substance is detected, inform the brain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is the gene active in the cells of your nose that allows you to detect odors.
So page 18 is the literal recipe that lets me smell my morning coffee.
Exactly. And let's flip ahead to page 239. Here you find the Samen-11 gene. Its chemical instruction reads, develop light receptors in the retina of the eye to make sight possible.
But hold on, I have to push back here for a second. We established that every single one of my 30 trillion cell skyscrapers has this exact same library, right?
Right.
My skin cells have the pink volume of chromosome 1. So why aren't my skin cells trying to grow light receptors? Why isn't my liver trying to smell coffee? If the raw instructions are sitting right there on the shelf, what stops the skyscraper from reading them?
That is the million-dollar question, and it comes down to a managerial mechanism. The answer is actually sitting just 6 pages later.
Oh, really?
Yeah. On page 245 of chromosome 1, you find the NOC2L gene. Think of this gene as the librarian. Its job is to tell the body which genes must be activated and in what locations.
Okay, but how does it actually do that? Does it just, like, send out a memo?
It's much more physical than that. The manager gene creates compounds that physically bind to the pages of the DNA. It essentially clamps the book shut on certain pages, blocking the biological machinery from ever accessing those retinal instructions if it's operating inside a skin cell.
Oh, wow. So it restricts the reading list based on the type of skyscraper.
Precisely.
That makes perfect biological sense. The instructions are physically barricaded.
And there are thousands of these hyperspecific, highly regulated instructions scattered throughout the volumes. Like if you flip to page 3047, you hit the MTHFR gene, which tells the body to build the machinery required to convert folic acid into its active form, methylfolate.
Okay.
And way back on page 47,094 is the factor V gene. Its instruction keeps your blood liquid in your veins, preventing the formation of a blood clot.
But here's the thing. This perfect symmetry, a pink book from mom and a blue book from dad, it creates an obvious conflict, doesn't it? Well, what happens if I pull down the pink volume of a chromosome and my mom's book tells my body to do one thing, but I pull down the blue volume and my dad's book gives a completely contradictory instruction?
Yeah.
Which one does the biological machinery actually listen to?
That introduces the biological rule of dominance. Let's look at eye color as an example. Go to chromosome 15, page 7,710.
Page 7,710.
Yep. This is the location of the OCA2 gene. If we open the pink book, the instruction might say, make a brown color in the eyes. But the identical page in the blue book says, do not make your eyes brown, make them green.
So direct contradiction on the exact same page.
Right. And the rule of genetics dictates that a producing instruction, the one actively saying make, will trump a non-producing instruction.
Okay, so the brown color wins.
Exactly. Because brown is the producing instruction, instructing the body to physically build and deposit melanin pigment, it overrides the green instruction. The green instruction is essentially just an instruction to abstain from making that brown pigment.
That makes logical sense, actually.
Yeah.
Like, if one worker is actively building a brick wall and the other worker is just standing there with an instruction not to build a wall, you're still going to end up with a wall.
Right.
The active production wins. Brown eyes are dominant.
It's a pure mechanism of physical production. But, the conflict isn't always between two healthy competing instructions. Sometimes there is simply a physical mistake on the page. A typo.
Oh, right. Let's talk about these genetic spelling mistakes because the mechanics here are fascinating.
They really are. So on chromosome 2, page 37,719, we find the LCT gene. In the pink book, the instruction is clear. When milk sugar lactose is detected in the intestine, it must be broken into two smaller sugars so no digestive problems arise.
Simple enough. Build machinery to break down the lactose.
But then we look at the exact same page in the Blue Book, and there is a typo. Instead of the chemical sequence spelling lactose, the text spells extoses.
With an X.
With an X.
So what actually happens when the biological machinery encounters that typo?
Well, remember that biological machinery operates on physical shapes, like a lock and a key. When the body reads the correct lactose sequence, it builds an enzyme perfectly shaped to grip a milk sugar molecule and snap it in half.
Right.
But when the code says extose, the instruction is chemically warped. The body attempts to build the tool, but the resulting enzyme is misshapen. It physically cannot grip the milk sugar. It's basically a broken wrench.
Huh. If my Blue Book is giving me a broken wrench, do I end up with lactose intolerance?
Actually, no. For a biological function like digesting lactose, just one working wrench is enough.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The factory reads the clear instruction from the mother's pink book, builds the correct tools, ignores the useless tools from the garbled Blue Book, and the person can process dairy without issue.
So having a typo in one volume isn't an automatic disaster. That redundancy is doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Oh, that redundancy is the only reason we survive. Every single human being carries about 2,000 of these spelling mistakes gene defects in their personal libraries. We all have 2,000 pages generating broken wrenches. The danger only arises when a biological function requires teamwork between the two books.
Meaning one working book isn't enough to meet the body's quota.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Let's go to Chromosome 16, page 31,664, the CETP gene.
Okay.
Its job is to ensure there is enough of the good HDL cholesterol in the blood. Now, Dr. Wallerstorfer, the author of our source material, has a typo on one of his copies of this exact gene.
Uh-oh.
Right. One book has the right instructions, but the other book has a spelling error and produces a useless, misshapen tool.
And because this specific gene requires a full quota from both books to provide adequate protection.
His protection against bad cholesterol is permanently cut in half. Practically, this means that whenever he gets a regular blood test, his HDL cholesterol is always on the low, bad end of the range. All because of a single swapped letter on page 31,664.
Man, where do these typos even originate? I think the common assumption is that, Dr. Wallerstorfer's dad must have been exposed to harsh chemicals or maybe some localized radiation that scrambled the DNA in that specific sperm cell.
It's a natural assumption, for sure, but the reality is much deeper in our history. The vast majority of these gene defects, 99.9% of them, developed in a single human being thousands of years ago.
Wow. Thousands of years.
Yeah. They have simply been passed down through the generations, copied endlessly from book to book across centuries. It is absolutely true that new spelling mistakes can be caused today by copying errors during cell division or environmental factors like UV radiation, carcinogenic substances, or radioactivity.
Right.
But almost all the typos in our personal libraries are ancient heirlooms.
So we've been talking about this perfect symmetry. The first 22 titles in the library all have two identical-sized volumes, serving as backups for each other. But if the whole system relies on having this redundant backup copy, what happens when the architecture fundamentally breaks down? Which brings us to the 23rd pair.
Yes, Title 23 is where the rules of symmetry completely collapse. These are the sex chromosomes. If you pull down the pink version, the X chromosome, it's a thick, robust book containing 842 genes. But the blue version, the Y chromosome, is about 2.5 times thinner. It only holds about 70 genes.
842 genes on the pink book versus just 70 on the blue. That is a massive structural discrepancy.
It's huge, and it dictates everything. The very first gene you encounter in that thin blue Y chromosome book is the SRY gene. Translated, its instruction is incredibly blunt. Be a man.
Just be a man.
Literally, that single gene determines the male sex. Almost all of the other 70 genes in that thin book are dedicated purely to male reproduction.
Wait, biology is rarely that blunt. Surely a single gene doesn't just flip a master switch for an entire sex. Doesn't have to trigger a cascade of other instructions?
Well, you're touching on the mechanism of how SRY works. It doesn't build the male body itself. It acts as a master trigger. It cascades hormones and initiates the reading of male-specific instructions hidden elsewhere in the library. But its presence on that tiny Y chromosome is the solitary domino that starts the process.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Women inherit two thick pink X chromosome books, one from mom, one from dad. But men inherit one thick pink X chromosome from mom and one tiny blue Y chromosome from dad.
Exactly. And that structural difference changes the entire game for genetic health.
I was visualizing this earlier and it reminds me of skydiving. Like, if you are a woman carrying two thick X chromosomes is like jumping out of an airplane with a main parachute and a reserve parachute.
Okay, I like this.
Right. If there's a typo, a hole in a gene on your main X chromosome parachute, you don't panic. You just pull the cord on your second X chromosome, which has a spare copy of the exact same 842 genes. You glide to safety.
It's the ultimate biological redundancy.
But if you're a man, you jump out of the plane with an X and a Y. The Y is so thin it doesn't contain matching copies for the 842 genes on the X. You're jumping with only one parachute.
Yeah.
If there's a hole in the gene on your X chromosome, you have no reserve chute. The Y chromosome has nothing to offer.
Dr. Wallerstorfer actually shares a deeply personal story in the chapter that painfully illustrates your parachute analogy. On his pink X chromosome book, on page 30,122, there is the CO4A5 gene.
Page 30,122.
Yeah. The correct instruction reads, produce building block number 5 of collagen, which builds strong kidney tissue.
Building strong kidney tissue. Let me guess. His page 30,122 has a typo.
It does. In his genetic book, the word strong is misspelled as X-strong, with an X.
And because he's a man, his tiny blue Y chromosome doesn't have a backup copy of the CO4A5 gene to offer. He's in free fall.
Without that backup instruction to build proper collagen, the physical structure of his kidney tissue is compromised. The filters in the kidney become structurally weak, like a sieve made of frail thread. Over time, the pressure tears them apart.
Oh, man.
This condition is called Alport syndrome. The kidney tissue slowly weakens with age until the organs fail completely. His only eventual options are dialysis or a transplant.
That is incredibly heavy. Unlike the cholesterol issue, this isn't just an elevated risk factor.
No, it is an absolute certainty. Alport syndrome is one of about 6,000 known genetic diseases that have a 100% chance of occurrence. If you have the typo on an unmatched chromosome, you get the disease. The biological machinery simply cannot build the tissue.
Wow.
Now, he inherited this pink X chromosome from his mother, but his mother's kidneys are perfectly healthy.
Because she had the reserve parachute.
Yeah.
Her other X chromosome had the correct spelling of strong, so her body built the correct collagen.
Right. She is a carrier of the typo, but her biological redundancy completely protected her.
Okay, so if his mother passed it to him, it brings up the whole mechanism of inheritance. If a child takes a full library from their mom and a full library from their dad, the next generation would have 46 titles, then 92. The skyscraper would explode.
Right, the math doesn't work.
So how does the body actually combine these massive volumes without doubling the size of the library every generation?
Well, we have to leave the skin cell skyscraper and travel down into the reproductive cells. When you step into the library of a sperm cell, the 23 titles are still there, but the pairings are gone. Every volume is only present once. It's a half library.
Because it's waiting to physically dock with the egg's half library to form a complete 23-pair set.
That's exactly how it functions. But the way this half library is curated is a marvel of randomized selection. The body essentially closes its eyes and grabs just one book from each of the 23 pairs.
Huh.
For Title 1, it might grab the pink book. For Title 2, the blue book. Every single sperm cell is a completely unique, thrown-together mixture of the father's genetic history.
So no two sperm cells carry the same blueprint.
Millions of them, all entirely unique, and the exact same randomized selection happens in the mother's egg cells. Because of this chaotic shuffling, every child is a totally unique mosaic of innate strengths, ancient typos, and raw traits. The only exception on Earth is identical twins who originate from the exact same shuffled combination.
And this random shuffling has massive historical implications, specifically regarding that 23rd title. You mentioned earlier that women only have X chromosomes to give. They have two thick pink books.
Yep.
So a mother's egg cell will always contribute an X chromosome to the half library. But a father's sperm? The random selection might grab his X, which makes a girl, or it might grab his tiny Y, which makes a boy.
It completely upends centuries of tragic royal history. You had kings obsessing over male heirs, blaming their queens, divorcing them, even executing them for failing to produce sons.
Right.
But biologically, the queen never had a say in the matter. The egg always brings an X. It was always the random sorting of the king's own sperm that determined the sex of the child. The king was essentially punishing his wife for the contents of his own half-library.
A brutal historical irony wrapped in a biological mechanism. But let's bring it back to Dr. Wallerstorfer for a second. If every man passes on either his X or his Y chromosome to his child, and Dr. Wallerstorfer has a defective X chromosome containing the Alport syndrome typo, did he pass that inevitable kidney failure to his kids?
Understanding the mechanism reveals a massive biological victory here. Dr. Wallerstorfer only has sons.
Oh, if he only has sons, that means the sperm that successfully reached the egg.
They all carried his tiny blue Y chromosome. That is the physical mechanism that made them boys. And because he passed on the Y chromosome, his defective X chromosome, the one with the X-strong typo, was left behind.
Wow.
His descendants have been completely spared from Alport syndrome. The ancient typo stalks with him.
That is profound. We started this deep dive talking about how murky and impossibly complex the diagnostic landscape of our genes is. 30 trillion cell skyscrapers, millions of pages of chemical letters.
Yeah.
But when you look at the physical mechanics, how the pages are blocked by managers, how a misshapen chemical wrench fails to grip a sugar molecule, how a parachute fails to deploy, it actually makes an elegant, if slightly terrifying kind of sense.
It's the ultimate instruction manual. Imperfect, carrying the scars of our ancestors, but beautifully complex in its execution.
Which leaves us with a fascinating evolutionary question to ponder. Since every one of us is built from a randomly thrown together half-library of our parents' strengths, typos, and biological histories,
Yeah.
what unique instructions and hidden reserve parachutes might be sitting on the microscopic shelves of your own 30 trillion libraries?
That is a staggering implication for the future of our biological blueprints.
Something to mull over the next time you look at the back of your hand. Thanks for taking this skyscraper-sized tour with us today. Keep exploring those instructions from nature.